Welcome, dear listeners, to Abyss of Horror. Gather round, for tonight's tale is not for the faint of heart. It is a story that begins with the familiar, a phone, a message, but soon plunges into the depths of the unknown. You may want to check your voicemail after this, but be warned. You might not like what you hear. This is voicemail from the dead. Elliot's phone buzzed at 3 a.m., a sharp vibration that startled him awake. Groggy, he reached for it, squinting at the harsh glow in the darkened room. A voicemail notification blinked at him, its pale light casting strange shadows on the ceiling. New message from no number. Elliot's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just some random spam call. It was his brother's number, his brother Jacob, who had died 6 months ago in a brutal car crash. He stared at the screen, feeling a creeping chill slither down his spine. His rational mind wrestled with the absurdity of it. A dead man couldn't leave a voicemail. Right. Maybe it was a cruel glitch, an accidental message from before the accident that had just now found its way through the network's labyrinth of wires and signals. But then again, curiosity gnawed at him. With trembling hands, he pressed play. At first, there was only static, a hollow, empty hiss that filled his ears, accompanied by faint clicking sounds. Then, from within the static, a voice, faint, garbled, but unmistakable. Elliot, it's Jacob. I need you to listen. You have to know. Elliot's chest tightened. That voice, it was Jacob's, distorted but chillingly familiar. His pulse quickened, fear and disbelief colliding violently in his mind. I'm not at peace, Elliot. It's dark here. So dark. The don't let us rest. The message ended abruptly, swallowed by the same static that it began with. Elliot sat there, staring at the phone, every nerve in his body electrified with dread. He played the message again and again, hoping to find something that made sense, something he could cling to. But it was real. It was him. The next day, Elliot went through his routine in a daze. He couldn't shake the feeling of Jacob's voice, the way it clung to him like a lingering fog. His coworkers noticed his pale, distracted demeanor, but he brushed off their concerns with a weak smile. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was some twisted prank, a voice manipulation app, something that had crawled out from the dark underbelly of the internet to torment him. But by nightfall, Elliot's paranoia grew. He found himself compulsively checking his phone, almost as if waiting for another message. His fingers hovered over the voicemail app again and again, his mind replaying Jacob's words. The second message came the following night, at exactly 3 a.m. This time Elliot was awake, staring at the ceiling, dread festering in his chest like a malignant growth. When the phone buzzed, he didn't hesitate. He pressed play immediately, the faint glow of the screen casting twisted shadows over his face. Elliot, I told you, it's dark here. There are others. They keep us. I can't escape them. Jacob's voice cracked with fear, the desperation palpable. Elliot's blood ran cold. His brother, once so full of life, now sounded hollow, broken. They know I'm talking to you. I don't have much time. Listen, there are things we don't understand, Elliot. Things waiting for us. We think death is an end, but it's just the beginning, and they're hungry. The message ended. Elliot's mind spiraled. Could this be real? Was it possible that Jacob was trapped somewhere in the liminal space between life and death? No, it couldn't be. He had to be hallucinating, or maybe grief was twisting his memories, warping his perception. But no matter how hard he tried to convince himself, deep down, he knew. The third message was worse. By now, Elliot hadn't slept properly in days. The tension knotted in his muscles, his nerves frayed and raw. The world around him began to feel distant, unreal. Objects seemed slightly off, as if they'd shifted when he wasn't looking. He would catch glimpses of something in his peripheral vision. Just a flicker, a blur. But when he turned, nothing was there. He began hearing whispers too, faint and indistinct, like a distant conversation you could never quite make out. On the third night, his phone rang again. He felt a cold dread settle into his bones as he answered the voicemail. Elliot. Jacob's voice was quieter now, as if coming from farther away. I don't know how much longer I can reach you. They're closer now. They're always watching. I can feel them, even now. A shuffling sound followed by what sounded like labored breathing. You have to understand. They want you too. They want to take you, like they took me. It's not over. Death doesn't stop them. It feeds them. Elliot's heart raced, the walls of his apartment pressing in around him. Don't come looking for me, Elliot. You can't save me. It's too late for me. But you... The message cut off abruptly, a scream echoing faintly before it dissolved into static. Elliot's blood chilled. His phone buzzed again immediately. Another message. He hesitated, his fingers trembling over the screen. Something felt wrong. More wrong than ever before. But he couldn't stop himself. He had to know. He had to listen. Elliot, a new voice rasped. Lower, deeper. He's ours now.
And soon, you will be too. The line went dead.
By the fourth night, reality had become a nightmare. Elliot's world no longer felt solid. He would find himself in places he didn't remember walking to. Rooms felt unfamiliar, like they were stretching and warping when he wasn't looking. Sometimes he'd see Jacob in the shadows, just for a moment, staring back at him, his eyes wide with terror before vanishing. The phone was no longer just an object. It became a symbol of his growing madness. He couldn't look at it without his heart seizing with terror. And yet, he couldn't resist the pull. Every night at 3 a.m., it buzzed. Another voicemail, another descent into madness. On the fifth night, Elliot finally understood the truth. He didn't need the phone anymore to hear the messages. They were all around him now. echoing from the corners of his apartment, whispering from the walls, seeping into his mind like oil. Jacob's voice, pleading, warning, drowning in a sea of darkness. And then the other voice, the one that wasn't Jacob. Elliot, you belong to us. He stumbled through the apartment, desperate for escape. But there was no escaping this. His reflection in the mirror looked back at him, but it wasn't quite right. His eyes were too wide. His face stretched in a way that made his skin crawl. He could hear them. Now. The whispers. The voices of the dead. Jacob was there too. His voice, barely recognizable. They're coming for you. They're already inside your mind. And then it all fell away. The walls, the floor, the sense of time and space. Elliot found himself standing in a dark, endless void. In the distance, shapes moved, twisted, amorphous things, their faces hidden behind a veil of darkness. But he knew they were watching, waiting. Elliot. Jacob's voice called again, faint, broken, as though being pulled from somewhere far beyond. It's too late. Elliot fell to his knees, clutching his head, his sanity unraveling as the whispers consumed him. His phone buzzed in his pocket one last time. Slowly he pulled it out, hands shaking violently. Final message from unknown number. He pressed play. The voice that spoke wasn't Jacob's. It wasn't even human anymore. Welcome to the dark, Elliot. You're one of us now. And just like that, Elliot was gone. Consumed. Swallowed by the darkness. Just as his brother had been. You see, dear listeners, sometimes death is not an end, but an invitation to something far more sinister. The voices of the dead may call out to us, but beware. When you listen too closely, they might pull you in. Forever. And now, it's time for you to decide. Do you hear them too? If you enjoyed your time in the abyss of horror, be sure to like and subscribe, but only if you dare. Comment darkness below if you've heard the whispers. For in the shadows, we are always watching,